Someone's going to be unhappy.
Well, at least no one could ever accuse us of overdoing a video introduction. And on that particular note, here we are finally in round one of our Ultimate Streamer Shootout. If you watched last week's video, you will know that we have a very intensive number of comparisons to do. So let me just quickly tell you that the winner is... No, you'll have to wait to the end of the video to find that out. However, there is plenty of good things to come in between, and I just want to take a few minutes to give a few caveats to the testing that we've done so that it puts it in context, and equally will give you a better opportunity to consider how that may then fit in with your own system, or indeed, more importantly, what it is that you're looking for in a streamer setup. So in today's shootout, it is between the Eversolo DMP-A6 Master Edition and the Volumio Primo streamer. They're very different price points, so let's get that very clear at the offset. The Eversolo is already regarded as one of the best in its class, so there is I would say, before we even get into the listening tests, a huge task ahead for the Volumio to compete with the Eversolo. Now, here are the caveats. First of all, we used an Anthem STR integrated amplifier. We applied the room correction with that to remove any frequency modes from our listening room. Our listening room is not the best acoustically. In the main showroom, we have an acoustically tuned small listening room, which we generally use for clients, but given that we had to get our staff involved with this, there wasn't really enough room in the small listening room, so we were ultimately using it in the main room. The loudspeakers that we were using were the Revival Audio Atalante 5s, which are a fantastic loudspeaker, and we used high diamond cabling. Everything received Puritan Audio's PSM156 mains conditioning, and all the cables that we used from the connection, easy for me to say, I don't have my teeth in properly again, everything that we connected to the amplifier had identical interconnects, so there was no advantage or disadvantage given to any of the devices as far as connectivity and mains were concerned. The caveat, I guess, is how the devices' impedance matches will work with the Anthem. That's very much an individual basis, and again, you may find that you get a different result in your own system at home, and again, that's where we can help you understand what would work best for you. As far as the testing was concerned, we did it all on a very level playing field basis as regards how we controlled the music. We set each device up as a Roon endpoint, and then we controlled it all through Roon playing the identical track from the identical source. In this case, we used Qobuz as the source for the music. The staff, when they came in, were only told they were listening to System A or System B. You will see from some of the video footage that will accompany this and some of the still images that each device was hidden, so they couldn't see any indicators, music playing on the screens as far as the Eversolos were concerned. So it was completely blind. And we did it over 3 tracks, and then they based their opinion, and bear in mind these are individual opinions and individual preferences when it comes to sound, to vote who won at the end of the whole process. There were 7 votes cast in total, and from those 7 votes we obtained a winner. It meant by having 7 also, we couldn't have a tie. I don't want to give anything away too much as far as the future tests are concerned. In fact, as I'm videoing this, there is the test for the 2 Eversolos about to commence, and you will see that video next week. This is probably one of, I would say, the most debated that I have seen on social media. Should I spend the extra money on the Master Edition device? And actually, very funnily, I saw someone who posted the other day, I've just upgraded my Standard Edition with the gold badges and it sounds way better already. Now, I know that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but there is a difference, and we'll cover those in next week's video. The final week will be the rest of the shootout, so everything else, the HiFi Rose, the SOtM with the Metrum DAC, the Zedu, which effectively is the parent company of Eversolo. We will have their devices in there as well. So there's a lot to talk about and a lot to do. So let's get right into the process and let's see what happened. So the guys are now in the main listening room and they're about to start the comparative tests. And just one little caveat before we get started is that obviously one aspect or one element that may assist or hinder the performance is the impedance matching between the streaming device itself and of course the amplifier. So that aside, it'll be very interesting to see what the results are. So let's head into the showroom and see how we're getting on.
So I'll give you this, Mr. Hanks. So we're going to have two shootouts, device A and device B in round 1 and device A and device B in round 2. I'll tell you which device is playing, and if you've got any particular comments that you want to put down when you're listening, put them down for us, and then at the end you just tick which one from round 1 you like, and then which one from round 2, and there'll be 3 songs played, of which you'll get to hear the songs on both A and each time. Simple as that. So we're going to start with
So before we get into the final voting process and who actually won, let's very quickly talk about the technical specifications and differences between the two devices that we blind tested here today. Okay, so very interestingly, the two devices sounded very different to each other. I wouldn't say there was any real similarity in the sonic signature, and certainly the feedback, and I would say almost universally the feedback that we received, or I discussed with our team here, was very similar in its context and in its descriptive nature as far as sound is concerned. So before we get to the result and who actually won this round 1 test, the Volumio, it was very different in terms of, I would say it's a much more laid back sound, a bit more recessed. Polite is the word I would use, and I always hesitate to use that word because it has connotations of boring and vanilla and everything else. But what I would say is there was no overemphasis of low frequency or high frequency. The detail is there, but it's much more in a very laid back presentation. It doesn't mean that the rhythm and timing isn't good, because it absolutely was, but it's definitely a more recessed sound, which a lot of people prefer, that very unforced, very natural sound. The Eversolo, on the other hand, was very much a more dynamic device. The bass was more visceral. The high frequencies in particular had more texture. You could hear the breaths in the female vocals much more succinctly. And overall, it gave a much more vivid picture of what we were listening to. Now, again, that may or may not suit your personal preference, but these are the differences nonetheless. And as far as our team is concerned, each individual within our team voted based on what they prefer it to be. So let's get the results up on screen, and then we can talk about the winner once we have done that part of this process for you. As you can see, it was a unanimous vote. It was a 7-0 voting ratio. It doesn't, I think, appear more, or it couldn't be more conclusive. I think also when we take into account aesthetics, the team also fed back that whilst the Volumio was very well made, and let's be honest, you know, in some of the highest end devices, there is no screen, and some may see that as detrimental to the sound. But in this case, it clearly wasn't. The aesthetics of the Eversolo, I personally think, are excellent. It's a beautifully made device. The build quality is without question. But equally so is the Volumio. It's exceptionally well made. You can tell it's a quality device when you pick it up. However, you can see the £400 difference just purely in the aesthetics, I believe. But some other may hold a different opinion. And with these types of opinions, you know, there is no right or wrong. It just comes down to the season to taste or the personal preference that we all have when it comes to devices. So the Eversolo was a clear winner here. There was not one person voted it or voted for the Volumio. However, a couple said there were certain tracks where they did prefer the Volumio, but overall, if they were to live with the device day to day, then it would be without doubt the Eversolo. And once we told them what they'd heard, then I guess it reaffirmed their opinion as far as their preconceived idea, which obviously we didn't allow that to influence their decision because of the blind testing that we carried out. But equally in terms of the build aesthetic and what you perceive as value for money, I think most people would concur that the Eversolo wins in that regard. So where do we go from here? Well, we head off next week into Eversolo versus Eversolo, and we will answer that burning debate. Is it worth spending the extra money? What do our team hear in terms of the sonic differences? Because bearing in mind it is a blind test. Apart from gold badging, they look exactly the same. So the internals that are different, which we covered in last week's video, and again we will discuss it in more detail in next week's video. And on that subject, I have a huge favour to ask you here. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It will be fantastic for us if you do. It gives a great incentive to produce more video content for you. Anybody involved in video production knows the time that it takes to shoot the video, edit it all, process it, and deliver it in a format that you guys can enjoy. And I genuinely hope you're enjoying this series of videos. It's kind of a new departure for us. So we're trying something new based on your feedback. So please keep giving us the feedback that you have. And it's an absolute pleasure to see so many viewers and new people joining our channel. It's one of the biggest increases week on week we've ever had. So thank you very much indeed. A personal thank you from me for those that have signed up. And as I say, please subscribe. It's just a couple of clicks. It's all it takes. And you know, all the team here at Elite Audio will be eternally grateful and thankful for you doing so. So there we go. Round one done and dusted. We're heading rapidly into round two, and then as we said in week 3, it'll be the final conclusion. We'll be able to make all the comparisons, we'll give you all the results of each direct test, and that in itself is going to be fascinating. And I know the team have been really enjoying doing this, making these comparisons, because doing a blind test, and it's interesting, your mindset is very different. There is, without a doubt, I think a placebo effect takes place when you know what you're listening to. But in a pure blind test, when you have no idea, it really then does come down to sonic performance. And in this week's test, the Eversolo won through. Thank you so much indeed for watching. It's been fascinating thus far. I hope you tune in next week to see the next round of results. And it will be it's so exciting to share those with you. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.